Hey, what's going on, cash flow hackers? It's Chris with Life 180, and I am here with Todd Langford from Truth Concepts. And we are starting a series today. This is going to be the first video in what I believe is going to be a 12 video series. It may shift a little bit as we go. But right now, we have 12 videos framed out that I think are going to be really impactful for you if you're in the business and you're an agent and you're looking to figure out how do you more effectively communicate with clients in a way that is actually going to serve them, in a way that's going to benefit them, that's going to educate them, that's not just about selling a product, that's about actually helping them solve a problem. One of the things I love about this that I'm excited about is Todd is just a fellow nerd like me when it comes to this stuff, I guess. Like I've always said, my wife, Todd, Hannah always says, there's nothing sexy about life insurance. And I'm like, yeah, but helping people is sexy, isn't it? Like that's the way I look at it. Like helping people is really sexy. So it takes nerds like us, to figure this out and be able to share this information with people. And so whether you're an agent and you're looking to serve and help people, I just believe that your ability to serve people is really predicated on your ability to build yourself into becoming an asset that can serve them effectively. And doing your own education and deep dive due diligence on really understanding this stuff inside out is the foundational element of all this. I mean, how can you show up and serve clients authentically and confidently if you don't have trust in your ability to back it up on the back end? And so what I love about what Todd has done over the years is he's taken his nerdness and taken it a different way than mine. I've taken it and coached and helped agents in these ways. And he's built this amazing software and calculator systems that help agents communicate the financial math side of things to get these complicated concepts to be broken down into their simplest parts to get people to understand them. And so that's one of the reasons that I partnered with Todd, and Todd and I decided to partner up on this series and come together and kind of do this truth concept / Life 180 cash flow hacking kind of series to take all of the philosophies that we have here at Life 180 and with cash flow hacking, with the personal growth, growing into becoming who you need to become, debt management, optimization, savings optimization, understanding that you need to know your investor DNA and finding and identifying the right investments to make for yourself. And in order to do that, it's great to understand what investments, whether it's real estate, business, traditional investing, whatever it is, I don't really care what you decide to do. I just think whatever you do, you should never put your money into anything you don't understand, and you need to understand the financial math, because financial math is wildly different than the math that you learned in high school or college. And so, and that's a sad thing. And so I'm really excited about this. And today, Todd and I are going to get into the untruths about financial math, some of the things that are misunderstood about financial math, and what people need to know to ultimately take steps forward. So I'm going to let you start, Todd. So thanks for being here. It's awesome having you.
It's an honor to be here. I love talking about this stuff, and the prospect of being able to get it out there into the public, get it out there both in the hands of the advisors and in the general public is huge, because something that we've discussed in the past was this idea that you can tell a lie in one sentence, but unfortunately it takes a whole chapter or even a whole book to
Totally.
tell the truth, right?
Yep.
And it's a lot of work getting all those pieces in, because people have to listen to a long conversation to get to what really is the truth. Because you can throw that lie
Oh,
out there and it sounds great, but unfortunately, there's nothing underneath it. There's nothing to support it, right?
so true. I heard somebody say the other day, 2 half truths equal one whole lie. So I was like,
That's
that's really good.
good.
I'm stealing that. But um, so the purpose of this first video is to kind of set the stage, because we're gonna,
Yeah.
over the next 12 videos or so, we're gonna set the stage about all the nuances and details and strategies and the financial math behind all of it. And you're gonna use your software and your calculator to make it all make sense. So I encourage anybody watching this, make sure you subscribe, hit the bell, get notified as we launch a new video every single week on this topic. Also, go check out the Truth Concepts YouTube channel. I'll put the link in the description below. They have content, they do training. It's amazing software. Todd is a wealth of knowledge. Todd, and I'm sure Kim is on some of those videos as well. And Kim will be here in a little bit maybe, but She's doing some other stuff right now, but like Kim is got a new book coming out. I've said this on videos before. Like when I first got into the business 15 years ago, she was somebody that I looked up to, and so it's cool. It's an honor for me to be now working directly with you guys. After I learned so much from her, and it's cool to be able to play a part in taking what you guys are doing and getting it out there on a bigger scale. So I'm excited about this.
Lots of fun. But so one of the things that happens is like, how, people ask the question, how can there be misinformation or lies in an industry that's based in math, right? Because, there's really no gray in math. It's black and
Totally.
white, right? So how does that happen? And
Yeah.
it's funny that it can actually exist.
Hmm.
And I've dug in behind the scenes to see. And so we've created some standards at Truth Concepts. Like these are some standards that we want people to agree with or try to beat them up and say, you know what, this isn't exactly right. And so I think just starting there, yeah, we're not really talking about calculations and math initially, but more a bigger picture of where is it that what do we need to look out for in
Yeah.
somebody's potential lie, or maybe it's a great road to go down. Let me make sure that these things are in order in what they're saying so that I can make a decision that's accurate and, to
Yeah.
go down the line. And so I think first off, I'd like to just bring those up and
Love it.
talk
Let's do it.
about what they are. All right.
Cool.
So here are the
There we go.
truth concepts standards. You're seeing that. All right.
I got it.
All right. So the first one, A, use financial math formulas and calculators, not just simple grade school math, which ignores time. And that is such a big part of that. It's like if we don't use a financial calculator and we're talking beyond one day or even, maybe 1 year, then the data is not going to be right because what happens with time is you have an exponential curve of either gains or losses.
Yeah.
Um, something you and I have talked about in the past is the idea I heard a long time ago, and it was about oranges. If I've got two
Yes.
oranges and I give you those and you've got three already, how many oranges do you have?
I have five
Well,
oranges right.
right,
Well,
you've got five. Well, how
yeah.
many do you have though in 30 years?
I,
Okay, that's a whole that's a whole different
it's
thing, right? Because
a
we've
whole
got
different
we've
story.
got we've got outside factors. We've got erosion in the form of rot, maybe that applied to those. Maybe somebody stole some along the way. We see that in our finances.
Yep.
Maybe one rolled out the window and happened to hit fertile earth and grew into a tree and made even more oranges. And we
Yep.
can see that maybe a great deal comes along from a financial standpoint. So really, if you think about it, financial math or money is really more like oranges than it is, grade school
Like
math.
grade school math. Yeah, totally.
So that's
I
that's
love it.
one we really have to watch out for, and we see that mixed in there all the time. Is
I love that.
regular old algebra, which doesn't fit when we add the element of time. So we have to have financial calculators.
That's the truth. That's the truth. I love it. What's the next
And the
one?
next one is to always compare strategies using equivalent cash flows, and that is
Okay.
such a big one, right? We
Yeah,
see
I mean, I
people.
think I think that happens a lot in the debt elimination world when people are trying to or like trying to utilize math and it's easy to change up and make it look better, but what they're really doing is they're just throwing more money at the problem and it makes it look way better. But um, if you were to, take that equivalent money that you're throwing at that extra problem in this new strategy, if you were to take that, maybe throw it in the previous strategy, who knows? Maybe it'd be better, maybe it'd be worse, but you gotta do the comparison.
Right. So we got to keep them the same. Perfect.
I
Yep.
love it.
The next one is to measure both opportunity cost and the opportunity gain. Right.
Mm,
And
I
and,
like
and
that.
that's a big one because this is really difficult for people to get in their head, and it's so devastating because we have a hard time with this. We can understand the gain, like
Hmm.
like as an example, if I said, "Hey, give me $100,000 and I'll give you $10,000 a year back over the next 10 years," you'd say, "Well, no way, I didn't earn anything on that. I got no growth out
Right.
of that." Well, you got the same money you gave me, yeah, but it's not the same thing when I lost the growth. So most people understand opportunity from a gain standpoint, but they don't apply that same loss of not just the money, but also the loss of the use of those dollars, whether it be earning interest or whatever else across that time frame. And so we
Sure.
have to do the same thing on the cost side, right?
100%. Yeah, I mean, if you think about that too, that example, you didn't, I mean, there's inflation isn't even taken into account. So you may have the same nominal dollars, but it's not the same purchasing power 10 years from now, right? So
Right. Yep.
these are things that people need to contemplate, consider. And how does that impact everything, every asset that you're doing, every financial decision that you make? I think it's one of those easy concepts to understand, and people go, yeah, duh, that's common sense. But it's not common practice in how people actually implement and execute in their personal finances on a day-to-day basis. And you and I both see this all the time.
Yep. And the next one is, even if you can get past that, how do you can calculate it? What do you have
Sure.
to figure that out?
Right. Yep. I love it. I love it.
So the next one is use the actual internal rate of return over time, not misleading advantage averages. And this is what we see all the time, especially when we're talking about market assets and that kind of thing. It's like,
Mm.
let's just take up all the ups and downs for the last 30 years and average that out and say, oh, the S&P did 12% over that time, and we'll just
Yep.
use 12% going out. Well, those ups and
Oh, good old
downs
Dave
don't,
Ramsey.
it's not the same as the average.
And so you use that example, and I 100% agree. And I think, the people perpetuate misleading, overly optimistic assumptions for those long-term rates of return. But I would say this is that, and we're going to touch on this in later videos, so I don't want to go too deep. I'm just going to drop this like grenade in the room, and we'll deal with it later. Is that this happens with infinite banking people as well, where they start being like, they start running numbers and doing illustrations in Excel sheets based on the 6.5% dividend rate, right? And they're not really talking about the internal rate of return of the policy.
Yeah.
And so then what that does is it creates confusion for people. And so what we're going to do as we go through this series, and this is one of the reasons I love what you do and love the Truth Concept software, is that it gets into the actual math, and you take the right considerations. If you're going to do a thing like a whole life policy, if you're going to look at an IUL, for instance, right, like you're going to look at that, you got to consider the long-term actual costs and look at it, everything, not just how they're illustrated. I got news for you. Whole life illustrations, IUL illustrations, all these illustrations are basically the equivalent of toilet paper once you get the thing, in
Yep.
force.
Absolutely.
You have to understand what are the assumptions, what impact those assumptions. And when you understand that, and then you can take those assumptions and put it into a good calculator, well, now you understand, all right, if dividend rates go up, here's what happens. If they go down, here's what happens. What is my risk? And I'm a big believer of thinking things through the lens of what's the upside? What's the downside? Can I live with the downside? Right? And if we go through that, then it's like, all right, now I've got this tool and I understand how to get to where I want to go. And so you become a much more educated consumer. You become a much more educated salesperson, so to speak, an educator. And you're really just helping people understand this stuff on a deeper level, and that's what ultimately is going to serve your client, because you shouldn't be, I believe no agent should be the key to their client's success. Outside of the fact that it's our job to empower and educate our clients to really take responsibility and accountability for the results in their life and be a resource for them when they need it.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's not just in the life insurance industry that we see this, right?
Everywhere.
It's everywhere. I mean, Dave
Mhm.
Ramsey, he's using now, the last things that I saw there, he's using a 10% return. Like, well, all you have to do is just take it and throw it in the market at 10%. It's like,
That's good, man. That's better than his 12% that he's been perpetuating for 30 years. He's coming in the right direction, at least.
all right.
All right. What's the next one?
The next one is consider the ripple effects of every financial decision, because nothing exists in a vacuum. We have a finite amount of money, and whatever we do inside of that is going to impact everything else. And people leave that part out. And so it is kind of interesting. Like, one of the things that happens, we look at real estate as an example. We invest in real estate and we think about the returns on the real estate, but what we don't think about is, but we have to keep a lot of cash laying around to make sure we don't get in trouble with that real estate from a capital loss standpoint,
Mm-hmm.
or of some kind from, a storm, whatever, or vacancies. And so we have cash laying
Mm-hmm.
around, and that's part of that investment. And so we don't get just the top end of that. We have to look at all those ripples and all those other pieces that we had to make because we made that decision, right? And that's sort of the piece that's left out. It's the same thing, we look at an investment. Um, Typically with an investment, when we're talking about market investments, we've got to think about taxes. We've got to think about um, management fees. We have to think
Mm-hmm.
about, and this is one that's often left out, and that is that certainty piece, the bond piece, or whatever that other piece is to make sure that we're headed in a forward direction. So when we're using like modern portfolio theory, we have to have that cash position, whatever it is, and that is part of that decision to have the equities in the first place, and that needs to be figured into that decision.
I love it. I love it. That's awesome. That's
All
just what
right, and
financial
then
efficiency is all about, is just really looking and making sure every decision you're making is helping you create a life that is meaningful to you, not just being
yep,
reactive.
yep. This is a big one. This is my new favorite word. It's only been around since the 2000s. It's avoid paltering. Don't let true, and that's a key piece, but irrelevant facts lead to false conclusions. So I'm going to go just a little bit deeper on this just for a
I
second
love it.
because I know this is something that most people probably don't really understand. So if we look at paltering, and so in Wikipedia, paltering is the active use of selective truthful statements to mislead. And that truthful is an important part. We all do this, right? We all do this, and we'll look at some of the places. But it's interesting. Paltering is considered both more serious and more common than a lie of omission, or just leaving out some of the things that you didn't want people to know, right?
It's because
And
it's like
politicians,
intentionally deceptive almost,
it,
They
it, it
know it.
is,
It's like a
even
second
though
level
what we're
of
talking about is
deception.
true. What's
Yeah.
that?
It's like second level deception.
It is.
Yeah.
So here, politicians use it all the time in debates. Think about it. They're asked a question they don't want to answer, so they say something else that's true that has nothing to do with what the question was, so that
Yep.
they didn't have to lie, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And like I say, we all do it. I found this from Yahoo, and it's magicians use most of what they do is or psychological tricks, and paltering is one of the major tricks that they use. But
Oh,
it's
that's
interesting
awesome.
because here's how we use it as humans on a day-to-day basis. And let's say a friend asks you if you like what they're wearing, and you don't
Mm-hmm.
like it, right? You think it looks terrible, but you don't want to tell them that they're your friend. And you don't want to lie. So what you do is you say something like, wow, you're really creative.
Yeah.
Okay.
Totally.
Well, are they creative? Sure.
Sure.
But what do they
And
hear? They interpret their mark as you condoning it.
yeah,
You didn't
totally.
say you liked it, but that's what you
I
wanted them
like
to hear,
I like
right?
it. I'm trying to think of all the ways that IUL agents palter. But anyway, keep going. Keep going.
Yeah, psychologists call it paltering, the art of deceiving, by saying things that are true but intentionally misleading. And see, like when we look at a magician, they don't just come out and lie to you directly, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is what's really key, I think. They encourage you to lie to yourself through your assumptions. And
Ooh.
so it's the whole look over here while I'm doing this over here, right?
Yep. Yep. Misdirection.
So paltering's a big one. We see this all through the financial industry, right? Like you
Correct.
said, with IUL and everything else. I mean, it's everywhere. It's
Yeah.
with whole life, even we see paltering,
Yep.
right?
Yeah. Oh yeah, totally. That's a lot. There's a lot of paltering that I see in sales and whole life, infinite banking, different people doing different strategies. That's kind of like the whole idea of the 6% dividend rate, right? That's a paltering kind of way to handle it.
Yep.
Being like, oh, it's 6% dividend, and then they run returns of 6%. They compare, hey, you're going to pay a 5% loan and get a 6% dividend. Like, look at this. Look how awesome that would be. It's like that would be great, but that's not how it works.
Yeah, and tell me how long a company could stay in business doing that, right? I mean,
Exactly.
it doesn't make
Exactly.
logical sense, does it?
No, it doesn't. Not at all. But hey, that's why we're doing this series. So it's cool.
And the last one is accurate strategies require both accurate math and correct formulas. And that seems like a weird thing to put down there. What's the difference? But I see this a lot. And it's kind of
Mm,
like paltering in a way. And so what I mean by this is many times people will have a formula for something. And the math that they did is correct, but the formula has nothing to do with what the situation is. It's the
yeah,
wrong formula, even though the math is right. And it kind of goes back to the oranges earlier, right? Well, I mean, the math was right. 3 + 2, you do have 5 oranges, but how many do you have in five
sure.
years? So we're for 30 years. So we're not using the right formula a lot of times, even though our math may be right. And that's what we have to really look out for.
Well, it's just what's the relevancy of having 5 oranges? That's really what it comes down to is why do you want 5 oranges right now? What problems are you trying to solve with those 5 oranges? You need those five. Is that 5 oranges, or is that going to be your food supply in 30 years or 10 years or five? Like, what are you like? What problem are you trying to solve? And like you can't really, and that's where the formulas come in, right? Is understanding.
Yeah.
All right, what problems am I trying to solve? Is it a retirement problem? Am I looking to be a real estate investor? Am I looking to take other risks off the table? And there's all these different formulas that come into play to help solve different problems. That's where the paltering comes in. Sometimes people are using the wrong formulas for a different problem and it's not really relevant to the situation. And so, um, yeah, that's awesome. I love it.
Yeah. So these are the primary places that I see as really is how again a math-based industry, the financial industry
Hmm.
can have misleading results. And
Love it.
it's usually through the one of these or multiples of these, right?
Yeah, yeah. That's cool. It makes sense. It makes sense. So you see that all the time, right? And so, the idea of this video is to kind of set the foundation of the truth about financial math, right? And those are the areas that, all right, we need to make sure if you're going to go through this process, um, you think about it through I guess that filter, and you consider those 6 things. That's key. But then when it goes to, I guess, when it's time for the rubber to hit the road and people need to make decisions, like I feel like there's a lot of situations where it's like, all right, how do you consider something that you don't understand yourself? Like if you're an agent, right? Like you have an obligation to educate yourself about this stuff, right? To really dive in deep and learn it. But if you're a client, if you're looking at utilizing whole life insurance, any type of investment, if you're looking to do real estate, if you're looking to, because you said it there, nothing happens in a vacuum, right? Every
Right.
decision that we make has a ripple effect. And so if you want to go invest in an IRA, an S&P 500, and you want to have your assumptions, like most people are going to say, well, your assumptions are ABC, right? And they may say, and this is why I say financial structure is much more important than the investments that we make, because it's like, let's say you're 23 years old, you may go out and be like, I just want to start investing in the S&P 500. Okay, that's all fine and good, but where are you keeping that money? How liquid is it? What other financial needs do you have right now? And what is the opportunity cost? What are the risks of having all your capital over in this one account, right? Over in these areas where now you have maybe very little or no liquidity in case of emergency or other things that may happen. And so then it leaves you completely susceptible. And this is what we see all the time is like you may feel like you're doing really well for a while, and then the market goes through a dive, and when that happens, all this positive gain and feeling like you're on the right track, maybe even for like a decade, bang, one fell swoop, one bad year, your life is on its head financially and you're having to start over. And I got news for you. For people that are we got let's just call it 40 years. We got a 40-year window at max. And that's being really, really conservative. Realistically, probably 30 years from when the average American really starts to be serious about planning for retirement. Like, let's call it 35 if we're being real. There's a very small percentage of the population are diligent and responsible enough to start doing it at a younger age. But like based on, I mean, I know I wasn't, like, just to be honest, like I wasn't at 25 saving away. I was being an
Right.
idiot. I was being an idiot still, And And so it's just like there, that opportunity cost, and those are the things that traditional financial advisors and strategies are not taking into consideration. It's like life doesn't happen in a vacuum or in a bubble, right? And we're emotional beings. Life, my favorite phrase is, as much of an, as nerds as we are about like spreadsheeting this stuff out and calculating it all, is life doesn't happen on a spreadsheet. It just
Right?
doesn't. I could show it to you how it could play out, but that's assuming all best case scenarios. And I got news for you. You're human. I'm a human. We're gonna make stupid decisions. We're gonna make emotional decisions because we're human. And those emotional decisions sometimes will work in our favor, and most of the time they won't. And it's just that's the way it goes. So how do we build our humanness into all this? And I think using the right money math, the right financial math that takes into account life, right? And I think that's what, some of these things can do. We can actually look at things objectively, non-emotionally, and realize that we are emotional beings and we're going to do these things, but like in a moment in time we can use these tools to kind of help us protect ourselves from ourselves, if you will.
Yeah, well, and I think that's a key piece of what you're talking about is, you
Yeah.
know, the math is not real life.
Right.
This is just our model. This we have to start there because it does tell us absolute black and white. It tells us,
Yeah.
it doesn't have the gray, but as humans, we live in gray. Our real world is not black and white, and so we need to know that base, and that's where the math comes in to give us direction so
Mm-hmm.
that we can make decisions of. So we know what are we giving up in order to do this, and this that we're trying to do might be certainty, it might be just for fun, it might be other things, but all of that is what makes the perfect financial picture. But when we have bad math driving the decisions that we're
Mm.
making, that's where there's a problem.
So what do you see with what you do? And obviously you guys, and by the way, hi Kim.
Hello, Chris.
Good to see you.
Nice to see you too.
So when you make these calculators, right? Like I'm only assuming, we've never had this conversation, but I'm only assuming that when you make these calculators, you make them based on inspiration, based on hundreds of conversations and looking at tons of real life scenarios with other people. And you are making these calculators to solve a problem, right? To solve problems for people, to help communicate to people in a different way, to maybe get very complicated concepts to make sense, right? Because if we could just look at it like that, it can make sense. Um, so, what are the biggest problems that you're seeing with people, like when it comes to the specifically the money math, the financial math, and the biggest misunderstandings that the average Main Street everyday American has about money math, about their assumptions and what they're doing with their money, and how can we help solve that?
Yeah, that's a great question. And so people really, the gimmicks are rampant right now, probably more than any time. I spend a lot of time going through because I am
TikTok's
open-minded
fault.
about it. I have my base ideas. I over time I've seen things thousands and thousands of times, and so I have a place to go where I can say, you know what, most likely, I don't have to just guess and do all kinds of outside experiments. I can narrow that down and see if certain things are true. And I'm
Mm.
always looking to be surprised. I would love to be surprised. I would love to be wrong. Like, find something that I'm wrong about because I would like to learn something new and different. But that's
For
where it
once,
comes
right?
from is some of these gimmicks that come out. And I'm looking at it like I would love for some of this stuff to be true, right? I'd
Yeah.
love the something for nothing. Unfortunately, most of the time it doesn't come out that way, right?
If you ever find that, let me know first, okay?
And so what we see in that process is, and that's what drives those calculators. Like, how can we get this across with people that are not don't love the numbers as much as I do and
Yeah.
understand the concept of what they're saying in a truthful manner. And that's really where they come from. And so many of the things are just
Hmm.
they sound great. We mentioned Paultering earlier, and that's really one of the primary places. It's like people bring facts that drive decisions that are
Yeah.
true but irrelevant to the situation.
Totally. I could not agree more. And so, I mean, it's so interesting in this world. Like, it's easy to beat up on the Dave Ramseys and the Susie Ormans of the world, right? Because they're just like too low hanging fruit, and it is what it is. Because their information, to me, it's kind of mind blowing how bad their information is, but how Main Street Americans just like follow it. And I think one of the hard things here is, and I'd love to hear both you and Kim talk about this for a second, is one of the things that I preach really hardly, and one of the, and I'm going through a lot of changes, right? Like, so over the last 3 years, my life has gone through a lot of changes personally. I've shifted a lot in my own spiritual growth. I've shifted a lot in my own growth in the way that I kind of feel called on this earth to serve people. And one of the things that has really hit me is that nobody's coming to save you, right? Like, we are in this. I mean, we're spiritual beings. We got to have a relationship with our higher power. We want to surround ourselves with like-minded people, with people that are on a similar mission and vision as us. And I think that helps us actualize like what we want our life to be about. But I think we're all put on this earth to do something unique. I think we are all put on this earth to do something that matters. And I think it's on us to identify what that is, what that unique thing is for you and your DNA. And I think we all chose to come into this earth at a certain time in a certain place with a certain family to accomplish a certain thing. And it's our life's mission to figure that out, you know? And that's it. Like I don't want to make it more complicated than that. Like, whatever you believe in spiritually, whether you're Christian, Muslim, metaphysical, like whatever, it doesn't matter to me. Like, I believe that is it. Like, and I think that kind of fits into every religious spectrum out there. And so when we look at that, it's like, what I've really resonated with is that money is a tool, right? Money is not the destination. And everybody out there, Dave Ramsey, they're all trying to like make it so money is the destination. Money is this thing that we aspire to have so we can be free. And the challenge is that there's not much talk about freedom through these other lenses. Like, I don't think there is freedom. Like, they talk about freedom as if like you have enough money, now you're free, you can show up and do what you want. Okay, I got news for you. Like, my way I look at it as I call it the 5 F's: faith, family, fitness, finance, and freedom. And obviously we all talk about the finance F a lot, and everybody wants to get to freedom, but there's no freedom if you don't have a good relationship with a higher power. You're never going to feel completely free. There's no freedom if you have bad relationships with your family and your wife and your kids and your friends. There's no freedom if you have a health crisis. Go talk to somebody who's got, $30 billion in the bank and they get a week to live diagnosis. Do you think they wouldn't give all $30 billion up to get their life back? Of course they would, right? So money doesn't matter. Freedom, there is no freedom without having health and relationships and a high relationship with the spiritual power. And the challenge is most people, sorry, I had to go on that tangent for a second, but like, most people look at money as this destination of freedom, but like, the problem is they're doing the wrong math, and they're not really taking the right variables or attributes into consideration that they need to solve all these problems in their life that they value. And that's because they're not clear enough about what matters to them. So if you don't know what matters to you, you don't know what problem you're trying to solve. And I got news for you. You're not just trying to solve having enough money to retire at 65 and hold on for dear life and pray that money lasts for the rest of your life. Like, so can you speak? I know that's a lot, but can you guys just like maybe take that and run with it from how can these calculators, how can people like really use the work that you do to educate themselves to really understand, all right, let's say I do figure out where I want to go. Let's say I do know what a life of real meaningfulness is to me. How do I then align my money with my values and my beliefs to create a life that matters, to create that life of meaningfulness? Like, because to me, like, that's my mission now, guys. Like, I've literally in the last week redone the whole mission statement for Life 180, redone the why we exist as Life 180, redone how we show, like everything, like our core values, everything is around this concept, because this has been my path for the last 3 years. And so, yeah, help me out.
Go ahead, Todd.
Well, I think that's what's so key to what's this has the potential to do. And that is we
Yeah.
can show the math and it's like we talked about, but that's not real life. And money needs to be looked at as a tool.
Hmm.
And it quite honestly, it takes some discipline to save. Okay. Well, if you don't know what it is you're saving for, how much discipline are you going to really have?
So
That's
true.
really where the problem is. And it's a knowledge, it's not a knowledge issue, it's an application issue, right? I mean, it's the same thing. I like to kind of tie it to getting in better health, better shape, right?
Yeah.
There's a million books on the subject, right? And
Hmm.
yet, so it's not an information problem. They all basically say the same thing. You need to eat less of things that are better for you, and you need to work out. Okay, you need to get
Yeah.
exercise. Okay, that's what it is. So why isn't everybody healthy? And it's the discipline piece that's hard. Well, when we're talking about money, how exciting is it to save for the sake of saving? And that means you're doing
Right.
without today, right? And you've got all
Mm.
these things coming at you that are saying, wow, you can have fun with this, fun with this, fun with this. So
Mm.
you're saying I'm going to give up that for having some block of money that I don't really have a purpose for out in the future? We got to figure out what that purpose is first. And that's the only way we're going to have that drive to
Mm.
make that happen, right?
I love that. How about you, Kim?
So I'll just go on record as stating that my current purpose, because like yours, it evolves. It's always shifting unless you're
Totally.
asleep at the wheel, which happens. But
Yep.
my current purpose is to activate for an even better way to get exponential results. And
Okay.
so, in answering your question about how do we gain that financial freedom, well, we first must understand that financial freedom starts here first. It starts in our head. And if we can be value creators in the world, and
Hmm.
we know at least a little bit about the good that we provide in the world as a service, and when we're working either physically with our hands or mentally with our brains, if we can be value creators in the world, we have financial freedom because we
Mm.
know that we can always create value in a way that benefits others that will happily pay for that value. And
Yeah.
we are free because that's an ongoing thing. And Todd and I both have parents in our mid 80s or in their mid 80s that are still working part time because they
Wow.
create value and they have a lot of purpose tied with the
Hmm.
creation of that value, as most people do. And
Yeah.
so when we get clear on that, then we can have the financial freedom. And then I'll add in one more element, and that is it's discipline, but it's, I think, in addition, habits. Because
Mm. Hmm.
basically, we're 100% disciplined to our current set of habits.
Totally.
So we need, and this is a quote from Dan Sullivan, we need to up the game of our habits. Well, what's the easiest way to do that? And that is to add in good habits. So, like Todd was talking about, if I am in the habit of eating cookies and I'm constantly thinking, stop eating the cookies, don't eat the cookies, what am I thinking about all the time? Cookies.
Cookies. They are good.
Yeah.
Oh,
Actually, I prefer ice cream, but that's okay. Um,
well, yeah.
So we want to add in the habit of, for example, eating vegetables. So what do? Well, I make sure I have vegetables in my refrigerator all the time. I try to eat vegetables maybe before I eat the cookies, like shift the habit, right? Make them small, make
Hmm.
them small wins. BJ Fogg, Tiny Habits,
Yeah.
right? Great book.
Yeah.
Make them connected to something. When hungry, eat vegetable, then cookie. Well, after a while, you'll realize, you know what? I'm probably able to let the cookie thing go. So I
Yeah.
added the habit, and it's no different now with money. So if I will put in place an addition, let's focus on adding first, then we work on the subtracting part. Because if all we're focused on the subtracting, all we're going to get is the cookie, right?
Yeah.
So in the savings realm, savings as a verb, which is what my career has come full circle on. Like I started there, I did all kinds of cool alternative investments, saw all kinds of people lose tons of money, got really frustrated. Back to the savings
Hmm.
realm, right? Savings as a verb,
Yep.
savings as a noun, where we store that savings.
Yeah.
So just add the habit. And the way to do that is to insert a different account between where we earn our money and where we spend our money so that the saving happens first.
I love that. So something that comes to mind when you say the habit thing is, well, what you guys just said ties into each other so well, right? Because you got to believe in what is it worth building the good habits, right? Because it's easy to have a habit of going on your way to work and picking up a donut and a coffee and, whatever. It's harder to say, I'm going to get up an hour early and hit the gym and be healthy and eat an egg white omelet and, take the time. Like sometimes some of the most healthy habits that are actually going to help us are harder to do. And so it's the habits also have to be coincide with, is it worth it? Right. Like, cause like the challenges and I don't know, have I ever mentioned this book to you guys, The Ant and the Elephant, before? Like
I'm aware of it. I don't know if it
Okay.
came from you.
Okay, so I love this book, The Ant and the Elephant. Vincent Pacenti wrote it, and in the book, he talks about the fact that the human brain only allows you to put 100% of effort into something that you believe with 100% certainty you have a chance of being successful with, right? And so the problem is like
Wow.
you got to understand what you're trying to work towards, and it's got to be in alignment. I think there's such a lack of alignment for people in this world right now, and you're never. I think it's. I shouldn't say never, but you're gonna have a really challenging time aligning the right habits with the right behaviors, to accomplish the goal, unless it's meaningful enough for you to actually do it. And that's where what you guys said goes so hand in hand. This is one of the passions that I've had recently, and one of the reasons I'm rewriting my whole cash flow hacking book right now and expanding it just beyond real estate and all this stuff, because of the fact that I believe, because of that statement, like the human brain only allows you to put in the 100% of effort to something you believe you can actually have a chance of being successful with. I think people look at the world right now of personal finance and they go, even though they don't know it well enough, right? No, very few people, and it's amazing. I've been going and speaking at a lot of events. I've already spoke at like 6 events this year, and I'm going to 3 more in the next 2 weeks. And I'm like on this mission to get this out there. And one of the things that I've realized is I've done these stats over the past 6 weeks, 8 weeks doing this. Less than 40% of the people in the rooms even know what the rule of 72 is. Less than and it's less than 20% of the people know what the 4% rule is, right? And so they and do you know what percentage of people know what the average rate of inflation is since 1971? It's like 5%. 5% of the people, like 1 in 20 people know that number. And so these are all things that are absolutely essential for you to understand to know how to plan moving forward, right? Like when we start talking about formulas and assumptions and all these things that are going to play into our life. So this is the interesting part to me is people don't understand the technicals. They don't understand these metrics and values, but their intuition is saying something's not right. Something here doesn't make sense. And if your subconscious says something doesn't make sense, you know what you do? You self-sabotage the shit out of your life. That's what you do. And so what happens is, and here's the crazy part. So I did the math on this is like, and of course I'm going on this based on, and I'm trying to keep it really simple, right? Because that's like, how we teach simple concepts and principle. And I'm not assuming, things like Social Security or anything like that. So just take it at face value, but just to get the concept, to get people to understand this time value of money thing and how all this works. And if you take the average rate of 4% inflation, which is a little lower than it's been for the past 50 years, right? Even though the Federal Reserve has a target rate of 2%, inflation's kind of like toothpaste. Once it's out, it's hard to get back in the bottle, right? So if we take 4% and then you understand the rule of 72, well, that means every 18 years, you got to make you got to double your income to maintain your standard of living. So if you're a 30-year-old right now, that means by 48 years old, you got to be making 200 grand just to maintain your standard of living. By 66, you got to be making 400 grand. So for a 30-year-old right now that's looking at $100,000, they got to get to $400,000 a year to maintain their standard of living. And I don't know about you. I don't know any 30-year-old right now that says, hey, 36 years from now, I'm really hoping to be living life exactly like I'm living it right now. We all want a little bit more, right? Is that fair? Like, so bare minimum, that's it. But like when we get to the the $400,000 a year number, they don't understand it. But if you take the 4% rule into account, that means we need $10 million. I don't know any human being alive making 100 grand a year that believes with a level of confidence that they're going to be able to save 10% of their income, 20% of their income, and get to $10 million in their retirement account. Right?
Yeah. And on top of that, it's very difficult to see that it's going to take that kind of money out in the future. And what are a majority of the financial information about retirement? What are we hearing? Oh, you can live on 50% of your current income. Well, wait a second. Nobody and everybody's just okay with that. Oh, okay, well, cool. No, wait a second. That's not what you said a minute ago. You wanted to maintain your current lifestyle and go on trips. How does that happen at 50% of what you're making now? Right.
And what you're making now is going to be worth a lot less in the future. And so like, and you know, it's just challenging. And so this is this is my passion for cash flow hacking. And we'll go through it in the next, you know, throughout the series here. But I just believe that rather than trying to save $10 million, the first game, and Kim, you said it perfectly, our first sale has to be in our own mind, right? It has to be selling ourselves. That change has to happen. That's why on the back of my shirts, it says, change your thinking, change your thinking, change your life. That's it. Yep. I know. I wish I should put that on the front of my shirts for my videos, you know, like I'll just put the shirt on backwards in the future. But change your thinking, change your life, you know, because that's where it starts. And the reason that I love cash flow hacking and the idea of investing for cash flow, I think it's a more efficient way to do it. And I could talk about all the technical mathematical ways, but the most important reason is because you can get your subconscious to believe in it. Because let's say you're a $100,000 income earner, that's $8,333 a month, right, of income. So if you start saving money first and you think about building your life structurally, you start saving first. And then when you invest, you start saying, all right, I need to get to $8,333 a month. I'm going to start investing. I'm going to try to get something that's maybe kicking out $100 a month in cash flow, $200 a month in cash flow. And then you compound that cash flow. You keep saving, you keep working towards it. But now the human brain, remember, the ant and the elephant, is going to allow you to actually work towards this because you believe you can do it. Why? Because you've seen that kind of money come through your life every year, every month. And you actually are going to know the metrics to go after. Not only that, you could take accountability. Now, every year when you check in with, where am I on this path? How am I doing? Like, these are all numbers that you can wrap your head around, and emotionally and subconsciously, you actually believe you have some control, and so you'll actually go out and do it. And that's the emotional side of the money game that like very few people want to talk about. But I think that's the power of investing for cash flow. That's the power of like, we got to trick our brains first, you know, trick our brains in the best ways, right? Like we got to reprogram them, you know, to actually show up for us, you know, and not self-sabotage because of bad information or scary information in the future. At the end of the day, the numbers are what they are. Inflation's going to happen. We're going to need more money in the future. But here's the deal. We should be checking in. Like, how stupid is it that we're like telling everybody you should be planning for something 30, 35 years from now? Nobody knows what the world's going to look like 35 years from now, right? Nobody knows what the like anything looks like. You don't even know who you're going to be. I don't like if somebody told me I'd be where I am today 5 years ago and that I'd be doing the things I'm doing today and going to Peru and doing ayahuasca and doing all these, like, I would have been like, you're insane. Like that's not me, that like, whatever. But now here I am. And I would have never believed it. But now, like, I can't even imagine, and I'm not going to try to figure out where I am 30 years from now or 20 years from now. But what I do know is that if we focus on the cash flow element of it, we can adapt easier and move the rudder on the ship a little bit on an annual basis, and we're taking accountability for it so we can actually do it. And what I love and I'm excited about is going through this and showing people how to do it utilizing all the math.
Proof
Very cool.
of concept.
Yeah, exactly.
And see, what's interesting is, and you mentioned it, it's about cash flow. You know, when we're talking about that distribution phase of life, if that's where we're getting to, What's really important is cash flow. It's not the size of the asset we pile up. It's what is it going to mean to us cash flow wise, right? And yet, what is everybody working towards in the financial industry? How much more money can we pile up out there in the future? Well, if it doesn't relate to cash flow, what good is it, right?
100%. And then the legacy side of it, right? It's like we want to live a life that matters. It's like, what does that even mean? And I think we need to be starting with the end in mind, like Stephen Covey said, and reverse engineering a plan. And that's the thing, is like, I love whole life insurance, not because I'm a huge whole life like homer, but because of the attributes that whole life brings to the table, because of the problems that whole life solves. And the people that I want to work with are people that say, I want my life to be meaningful. I want it to be about something that matters. I want to leave a mark and make this place better for the people I love and care for. And when you go at it from that lens, is like, whole life insurance is the only financial asset in the world that will guarantee a specific result at the end of the day, right? And we can still live our life and try to do all the fun stuff and create and whatever along the way, but having this tool that we know is on the back end to kind of protect our wealth and make sure it transitions to the next generation. We can, use trusts and all these other different vehicles that make sure it all kind of comes together. But when we do that, is it all starts with like really getting clear about creating a life that matters, and what does a life of meaningfulness look like to you? And it's kind of cool that we're being able to find now this intersection of the math to back it up, but then also the philosophical kind of subconscious, spiritual kind of, like, it all weaves together. And that's what I love, is when we can get to a place of like principles over strategies and tactics. that's where people can win, but we need to start with principles first.
I want to challenge you a little bit on the Stephen Covey comment. And I actually was trained in the original Stephen Covey 7 Habits of Highly Effective People when I was in my mid-20s. I loved it. Like, what a gift. I started work at a bank, and they had this corporate training program, and we did it. So I totally agree that that's valuable. And I think it's too big of a step for a lot of people, because exactly what you were saying, it is impossible to think about what their lives are going to be like 30 years from now, even 100%. 20, even 10. I mean, even business plans today are maybe 1 to 2 years, right?
Yeah.
And as much as I love every single one of Todd's calculators, I have an issue when we're not only struggling with figuring out what we want our life to look like conceptually and spiritually and in our family 30 years, when we try to figure out mathematically what we want our life to look like in 30 years and do that working backwards thing, that is called typical financial planning. And it is extremely difficult to do, because nobody knows what they really want their life to look like. They know what they don't want. I don't want to be poor.
Sure, totally.
Okay, so they can list a whole bunch of stuff they don't want.
100%.
But to try to figure out numerically what that looks like out there in the future and then work backwards is, I believe, an exercise in futility. It will be mathematically correct, and it will have nothing to do with your life. So what do we do instead?
I love that.
Start today. We work with what we know today. So is that same calculator valuable to say, well, if I do this for the next 30 years, here's what it's going to look like? Yes, it's valuable to do that, especially if somebody's mathematically, numerically, analytically inclined. For those of us that are not, I'm not even sure that's valuable, because all I can control is today. And this dollar, can I make this dollar do good work for me today? Now, there's one other layer I want to throw in there, and that is the utter difficulty of helping human beings think long term. Right?
Yes.
So it almost sounds like I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth, because I'm saying, don't look.
You're not wrong.
Don't look long term. It's too hard to think long term. Don't do math long term. And yet we know that we're going to live a long, long life. So We have to be able to take that dollar today and just for a minute, get our head up amongst or above the muck and see out there long term what it can do
Yeah.
for me, which is why the calculators are so valuable.
Uh-huh.
So that I can very quickly bring that back and make a decision today with something that I can control. That's a challenge.
100. I love that. So I've got like, I guess 3 things I want to say. I look at it and maybe I'm just like, I don't know, too like pie in the sky, idealistic. I don't know. But like, I agree with you. The whole nobody knows where they're going to be. But what I know about my life, and these are the people. Listen, I work with a lot of people, and not everybody sees the world through the same lens I do. But what I know about my life is that I want to maximize my impact on this life. You know, and I know that right now with where I am, the life insurance company will tell me the maximum amount that I'm allowed to have, and and so if I have the ability to say, hey, I can buy a specific result, buy my potential future net worth, and then I can work on a plan to build my cash flow. Well, that's just a way that I've now been able to gamify my life, right? Because I know I've already won, right? I know I could die tomorrow and I mean, granted, I'd miss out on some things and, you know, hopefully some people would miss me and so on and so forth. But, you know, I've got at least the financial side like locked in and I've got it in place where I know that that will kind of self-actualize, right? It'll automatically complete.
Not kind of. It
Right.
will.
It will. And I mean and if I were to die tomorrow, there are certain things that I still am uniquely able to do that would be missed out on, that I wouldn't be able to complete, which, you know, would be sad. Want. But like, hey, it is what it is. The other thing is like I believe in a concept called PDCA: plan, do, check, adjust. Make a plan, do the plan, check the results, adjust where necessary, right? And so it's like you go through this process, and that's where we need to be doing this in our financial plans. I think too many people decide they want to just like, all right, I'm retired at 65. I'm just going to save 10% away. And they don't check every single year, like, how's it going for me? Like, how my like, what's my trajectory look like? How am I trending on this plan? How's it working? Like, I did the plan, but I'm not checking the results, and I'm not able to. If I don't check the results, I'm not able to adjust where necessary, right? And that's a big problem. So I think it's easier to do that PDCA process when we're looking at things through a cash flow lens versus a big, huge accumulation lens, because to Todd's point earlier, there's so many variables that come into that long term. The further out, as you guys would agree to this, the further out we plan, the more variables we have to take into equation, right? And so it makes it way more complicated. Fair enough? And then the third thing I would say to what you said, which I love, is that it's one of the reasons that I love whole life insurance more than anything, because I think it's the only asset in the world that will grow with you as your life grows. And you can start using it as kind of a pseudo emergency fund. It can grow into becoming an opportunity fund. As you get older and your kids need college and all these things, it's there. You can, if you do it with the right companies and you get living benefits and you become critically, chronically, or terminally ill, you have access to it. It could be a volatility buffer in retirement. It'll pass money on to the next generation tax-free. So as you go through life, whether you're 20 or whether you're 70, 80, 90, it'll be there and it will grow with you. And you can, it's the most flexible asset, meaning as you go through, you can start to utilize it in different ways as you hit different phases of life where your needs change. Because my needs right now at 45 are way different than they were at 25, and they're going to be way different at 65 than they are right now, right? And so, but the cool part is I know I have this asset that will be there with me that I can pivot and utilize it in different ways. And I think that's the power. I don't know of any other asset in the world that has even close to the ability to help me in all those ways and kind of check all the boxes to solve all the problems that it does. And that's why I love it so much.
And
well, think about what you said about the growth and the change of who you are versus where you were 5 years ago. What if you were locked in to the financial decisions you made 5 years ago, and that was going to be your life from now on? Well, you know, even in a 5-year time frame, that's completely different. And that's, I think, one of the dangers that happens with typical financial planning is everybody's locked in a box that they can't move on, knowing that things are going to be different over the next 30 years. Do you want to be locked in a box where you're on a course and you're just stuck there? Or do you want to be able to look at it, make adjustments, not just on maybe how that stuff's performed, but on how your outlook on life is and what it's going to require for you to do your purpose in life out there in the future. So really the biggest thing you want is wiggle room, right? You want to be in assets that allow you to move with the flow of knowing that black swan events, gray swan events, all these things are going to hit us along the way, right?
Yes. Everything.
And that's the totally. And I was going to layer in, because we all want to talk about growth. We all want growth in our life. What happens when something causes shrinkage?
Yeah.
A whole long list of things, right? Loss of job, divorce, market correction, lawsuit, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Investment fail, right? But nobody's talking about those things.
Yep.
And life insurance can be your support structure when those things happen.
I love it. Well,
we heard Kim and I went to a play in our local little town of 30,000. And there was a great line in there about money. And the line was, money is like manure. It's not worth anything unless you spread it around to make things grow, right?
In fact, it's probably horrible to have if you don't use it. It just smells and is nasty. That's awesome.
That is from Hello Dolly. Isn't that
Hello,
awesome?
Dolly. That's awesome. That's a great quote. That's a great quote. Well, guys, I'm really excited about this series. I was telling Todd earlier, I'm stoked to be doing this with you guys. I think it's going to be really valuable. Getting into the calculators. I know today we didn't dive into the calculator usage very much or at all. But we're certainly going to. This is just setting the stage for the content that we're going to cover with all the different things. And so if you have any questions, any comments, I mean, we have our 12 video series kind of mapped out that we're going to do. But I encourage everybody, as you're watching, leave comments in the comment section and engage, ask questions. And we're not stuck at 12. We got the ability to do whatever we want here. So we can make this a perpetual thing if we need to. But leave comments, ask questions, engage. We want to make sure that this series specifically is adding as much value to you as possible. Whether you're somebody who's looking to utilize these strategies and you're talking to an agent and you don't feel like you're getting the clarity or the education that you need, I promise you're going to get it in this series. Or if you're an agent, I would say you got to learn this stuff. Like, you have a responsibility to become who you need to be to serve the people that you want to serve. Like, that's really what it comes down to. And so I'm really excited, and thanks for being here. You guys have anything else you want to say before we go?
No, like you said, I'm just excited for the series and the opportunity to get it out there. Again, this is going to be the book that corrects the one-line lies, right? And hopefully in a way that can be digested. And so I like the idea of the comments and everything else. If there's a way we could say something a little bit cleaner as we go through and get into the math, because we'll go deep, right? Because in order to have valuable stuff, we have to have the detail. And sometimes that, can kind of bog down, but hopefully we pull back away from that enough to relay what it's actually saying. And when we miss that, we would love the comments.
Love it.
And yes, I always want to say something else.
I know. That's why I'm giving the chance.
Figure out how you learn best. Obviously, we've got a great video series going here, but figure out for yourself. Do you like to read? Do you like to watch? Do you like to listen? A lot of people have two different ways that they learn best. Great. Then go find resources in those modalities so that you can really bring that learning home. And let's start taking responsibility for the monetary lives that we all live, because money may not be everything, but money absolutely impacts everything that is important to you in your life.
I love it. All right, guys. Well, if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe and hit the bell. That way you're notified every time we launch these videos every week. And go check out, I'll put the link down below as well for the Truth Concepts channel. Go check that out, and I'll have all the links that we need to have in there down below. So check it out. And until next time, have a blessed, inspirational day. We'll talk soon. Later.